My name's Sylvia Shaw, and I teach in English language and linguistics, and it's my colleague Heather Pagan, who's the other person on the video, and we're going to take the session today, and it should be about an hour, and it's an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. Okay, so what we're doing today. So it's for students who've applied, so like Kriti, who've applied to study English language and linguistics at Westminster, and you're kind of waiting to come here. Or for anyone who's interested in what it's like to study English language and linguistics at university. So probably there's a lot of similarity between English language and linguistics degrees across the sector. So there'll be quite a lot of similarity between the sorts of things that you learn on this sort of degree as an undergraduate. And so today we'll discuss what studying English language and linguistics at university involves, first of all. And then we'll give you a taste of the sort of things we study and how the subject is taught. Obviously, we would ideally be doing this face-to-face in a nice classroom in this beautiful building, which is our base on Regent Street. And it is such a shame not to be able to be there at the moment, of course, as with lots of things at the moment. We can't do them. Yeah, we can see the scribbles on the screen. I don't know if you're aware that we can see the scribbles, but yeah. Okay. So the other thing we'll do a case study investigating Donald Trump's linguistic style. So it's particularly pertinent today, of course, as Donald Trump's final day in office. And so we thought this would be a nice, interesting subject to look at. Okay, so this is us. This is the whole team. So over here, this is me. I think I'm not that short. I think I must be leaning on something. This is Heather, and then these are all the other tutors, and this is Kelek Chuwu, who wasn't able to be there at the time, but we photoshopped him in. Okay, so it's a happy bunch, quite a big bunch of people who would be teaching you or will be teaching you on the course. Oh, thanks, Sinead. Sinead's just put a link to a Google Drive where we got some documents for you. So you can download this presentation and some notes and information about the degree. Okay, so that's who we are. So just two of us talking to you today. The other thing I thought it was worth doing is just say that a degree in English language and linguistics offers you a number of very important skills that are prioritized by people who are hiring graduates when you finish your degree. Sometimes it's said that a degree course should be very vocational and track you onto a particular a particular vocation or a particular type of work. English language and linguistics doesn't really operate in that way. It enables you to accrue a range of different skills. And as shown here, there's sort of high-level communication skills, high-level critical thinking and analytical reasoning, ethical judgment. I mean, it's a slightly fuzzy slide, but you can read through that for yourself. Ability to work independently. So we think of these as generic skills that you accrue over your course of your degree subject. And in addition to that, of course, a degree in English language and linguistics qualifies you for really specific things. So it qualifies you to go on to further study in English language and linguistics, but also for things like speech and language therapy, for some aspects of computational or computer linguistics to do with artificial intelligence, for example, and so on. So there's a range of specific and more generic kind of destinations that you can end up in after an English language and linguistics degree. Okay, so what is it? So wherever you go to do English language and linguistics, and however you study it, the first thing that you will do is you'll need to understand what language consists of. So, and if you're studying English language, particularly what does English language consist of? So the difference between English language as a subject area and linguistics as a subject area is that linguistics covers all languages. Okay, so it's finding out about how all languages work. Whereas, of course, English language is much more of a focus on the history and development and existence of just the English language. So this circular diagram shows you the first thing that you will do in a linguistics degree is you will understand what languages consist of, what makes them up, and you will aim to be able to describe what the component parts of language are. You can think of it a bit like a car. So different cars are different languages, and but every car has an engine, and every car has these different component parts that make it go. And it's the same for languages. Every language has these component parts. So whether that's this level, the phonetics, all the sounds in human languages, or phonology, the way sounds combine in particular languages, morphology, which is the way units of meaning build up to make words. Syntax is about how words combine into grammar, into longer structures like sentences. Semantics, I'm sure you've come across this before. Semantics is about meaning, and pragmatics is about how meaning interacts with the context that we're in. And discourse and text is just a name for the sort of larger structure. So whatever degree that you do, you will start off by learning how to describe these things in some detail. Okay, and once you've mastered that, once you can describe the phonology of a language, the morphology, the syntax, the semantics, the pragmatics, and so on, you can then go on to do much more, I'd say much more interesting things. So once you know what languages consist of, you know how it works, you can then go on to ask some questions about language. And so these might be things like, how do children acquire their first language so effortlessly? And that would belong to an area of linguistics called psycholinguistics, which is to do with psychology and how the mind works. You might want to know, why do some people dislike some accents and like others? What makes an accent prestige or stigmatized? How does language change over time? How does it develop, and why does that happen? That's Heather's specialist subject. Or you might want to extend it into something like, how do memes work? I've got a meme over here. This is the distracted boyfriend meme, which is now incredibly old. But it's interesting to think about how memes work, because they work by some of the meaning remaining static and some being transportable or variable, don't they? So that's how, and also how the language interacts with the image as well, and which parts of those are transportable and which parts are fixed. And the last two that we're going to think about today is, why are some politicians persuasive? So what is it about their language that makes them able to persuade people to do things, or persuade people of their own popularity? And finally, we're going to think about a topic in the branch of linguistics called forensic linguistics. How can linguistics be used to solve crimes? And we're going to particularly think about authorship. So how can we tell that someone has written something or said something, mainly written something, actually? Okay, so as I said before at the beginning, for the last two of these questions, we're going to think about the language of Donald Trump, both for authorship, although the crime doesn't actually come into it, but both for authorship and for how he is persuasive. Okay, so why is Donald Trump's language persuasive? If we're considering this question, the first thing we want to do, just like the first thing that I showed you on the slide with all the circles on it, we need to describe his language in some detail. And so in a sense, anyone on the street, anyone with any kind of observational skill could observe Donald Trump's language. But on that slide that I showed you with the circles on it, that gives the linguist a much more detailed way of describing, a much more analytical way of describing language. Okay, so this is based on some observations that have been made by linguists. Some of them are more technical and some of them are less technical. So for example, the first one, the observation about or description of his language, is that Trump's language is not complicated. Okay, and the technical way of talking about this, we can say it has a low lexical density, or a ratio of grammatical words to vocabulary words. Okay, so it's very unusual for a politician to have such a low lexical density. Don't worry about that, it's a technical term, but it's a way of measuring how complex someone's language is, and his is not complex at all. Rather an obvious observation, I think, maybe one that you've made yourselves, is that he repeats himself often. Also, his language contains errors, what could be considered as errors, things like bigly, unfinished sentences, but also going off at a tangent and not really following one subject on from another in a very unusual way. Also, of course, it's worth considering that the genre of the political speech is normally quite formal, and these unfinished sentences make his language very unusual in the political sphere. He uses extreme language and hyperbole. I'm sure that's a word you've come across before to mean an extreme way of describing something. Another slightly technical term is discourse markers. So often, and especially teachers, use discourse markers all the time because they show when one piece of discourse has finished and another is starting. So teachers, especially all the time, say, right, let's do this now, and well, and so on. And it segments the discourse. But he doesn't use these at all. He instead uses I. Instead of right. So he puts himself sort of to the fore. He puts the prominence on himself. And he uses vague language. So he uses vague groups like people, you people, he says, or those people, or some people, very vague. He uses pronouns like they, and words like horrible, so that they're vague. We're not quite sure what he means. He says it's just horrible. We're not sure what he means. It's just horrible, but it sounds really terrible. Partly because of the hyperbole, but partly because the vagueness actually makes things sort of scary. Okay, so that's the first step, is to describe his language. And the second step is to interpret this data, so interpret this description. So why does his style work? I mean, from that description, you would think, well, surely that just means that, people don't listen to him, he doesn't make sense, and he's not a successful politician. But actually, okay, latterly he's on the way out now, but he has been incredibly successful. And these are some interpretations of that, his style, as to why that's the case. So first of all, Trump's different from other politicians. He sets himself apart from them, and that appeals to some voters. So in the same way that I said the norm for speaking in politics is quite formal, of course he doesn't speak formally, and some people like that. They like the fact that he speaks informally. The second reason is because he asserts himself. He presents himself as authoritative, and as I said, with the lack of the discourse markers and the primacy of saying I all the time, he shows his authority. And some people like that in a leader. They think it shows a strong leader. The third point there, his vague language attacks and other groups in unspecific ways. Attacks other groups in unspecific ways. So as I said, they and horrible makes people afraid and raises their emotional responses. And overall then, his language is informal, and it's being claimed his success is partly because of people emotionally respond to him. So it's almost as if he's having a chat with them. It makes people feel close, like there's some solidarity with them. And this really motivates people and adds to his popularity in general. Okay, so that was just a short overview of some of the ways that you could answer a question like, why is some politician persuasive? By describing their language, first of all, and then by interpreting their data in a technical way. Okay, so now I'm going to pass over to Heather, who's going to talk a bit about Donald Trump's tweets, so his written language, and some authorship studies to do with that. Okay, over to you, Heather.
All right. Just going to move the slide here. All right, so one of the other areas, or one of the other areas that we can study when we're looking at studying language, is something that's called forensic linguistics. So that may be a term that's a little less familiar to you, but forensic linguistics is an area of linguistics that focuses on analyzing texts that have been used in a criminal context. The word forensic just is describing the fact that it has to do with law. So this is a place where if you're interested in law, if you're interested in crime, and you're also interested in language, this is the place that those two things um, intercept. And one of the ways that linguistics can be used in this type of context is to identify who might have authored a particular text. So you could analyze textual material or even auditory material if that's what you have. Generally, though, it's text that we are analyzing, and we can look at the style of the text, and we can analyze the style of the text in those same ways that that Sylvia was pointing out earlier, with the purpose of identifying who was it that wrote the text. Why is it that we might have a text where we don't know the author? Well, it might be that we have several possible authors, and what we're trying to do is to match a particular text with an author and see, is this text written by this person or this person or this person? We may also have an anonymous text, and we just want to see if we can narrow down the field of who it is that might have written it. So we can, in fact, use linguistics to create a linguistic profile and say, okay, who might be responsible for writing this text? In these cases, there might be a lot of different reasons why a case might have a text where the authorship is unknown, or where the authorship might be disputed. You could have something like an online threat from an unknown individual, or somebody who hasn't signed their name to the bottom of the threat. So the text could be analyzed to determine who it was who has sent the threat. You could have something like a ransom note. We did some work on that on ransom notes in one of my recent modules to determine who might have sent a ransom note in a crime. You can, it could be for slightly less nefarious reasons. People take similar types of analysis and use them for plagiarism detection. So you may use this type of software when you submit work for school. Again, it's analyzing the style of the text in order to determine whether or not, in fact, you were the person who authored it. And what we see there in the background of the slide, this chart here, is actually evidence from a case where linguistic evidence was very important to determine what had happened to the individuals. So this is a slide of evidence taken from the case of Jenny Nickel, who was a 19-year-old woman from Richmond who went missing in 2005. Now, she went missing on the 30th of June, but her friends and family continued to receive text messages from her for several days after that, until she was later found murdered. And one of the key pieces of evidence in the case was the analysis of these text messages in comparison to the language of other text messages that she had sent in the past. But they also compared these text messages to the language used by her suspected murderer. This was David Hodgson. And so what you see there is a comparison. So the variable, that's the term that was taken from the text messages that were sent. And then they show what Jenny Nichols' preference was, how she tended to express herself in her text messages, and in comparison with Hodgson's preference. And we can see there that there is a lot of similarity between what was sent in the disputed text and Hodgson's style, while it does not tend to match as much Nichols' preference, Nichols' stylistic choices. So it was, as I said, one of the key pieces of evidence against him, and showed that he had been sending text messages from her phone, attempting to cover up his role in the murder. So what we're going to do now is also look at some text that we can analyze in a similar way to determine who was the author, who is the author of these tweets. And so just to give you some context from where these tweets are coming from, as you're probably aware, Trump has had a significant Twitter presence. He tweets frequently every day, except in the last 2 weeks or so when he has been cut off from Twitter. And so there's a large number of tweets that we can look at, and we got a general idea of what his tweeting style was like. What kind of language did he use? How frequently he tweeted. Now, last year, on October 4th, he was admitted to the hospital with COVID. And there was a period of silence on his Twitter account. And then on October 5th, there were repeated tweets which claimed to come from his account in sort of a burst of tweets. And the media certainly made note of this burst of tweets, and there was a bit of questioning whether or not this was in fact from the president. He was in hospital. Are these in fact his tweets, or is it possible that somebody else was tweeting on his behalf? So what we're going to do is have a look at his tweets both before and after October 5th, and we'll have a look at the tweets on the 5th and see if we can determine by looking at the language and the style of his tweets whether or not these tweets actually came from him. So on the next screen here, this has got the wrong slide. Sylvia, I don't have my correct slide here.
Is there a specific slide? Because I can re-upload the old presentation that was previously sent. Will it be on that one?
Yep. Do you want me to email it to you, or I can just upload it myself? Can I not, or am I presenting?
Yeah, you should. I have access to it, but you can upload it yourself if you've got it.
Okay, give me a second, and it looks like one of my slides has gone missing, so if you'll just give me 1 moment with that, I will get it loaded. One second, we're just converting the files, and then it'll come up. one of the things that you can do then, so what I did in is to create a corpus. So basically what I was able to do was then make a whole list of all of the tweets. And so I've chosen a selection here. So these are tweets that are from the couple of days before and after the event in question. And so what I would like us to do then is to take maybe 5 or 6 minutes now and have a read through the tweets that I have on the slides there. And what I'd like you to think about as you're reading through the tweets is to think about the characteristics that Sylvia highlighted earlier on in the presentation about Trump's language. So when you're reading through, do you see these similar characteristics? Can you see how his language use is uncomplicated, that he has quite simple language that he's using, that his language tends to be repetitious, that in certain cases he will make language errors, use forms or words that would be incorrect, that he tends to use hyperbole or extreme language. A lack of discourse markers perhaps less evident in Twitter, since but you may find evidence of some vague language. So why don't you take a couple of minutes now and have a look through these, and then I'm going to ask for you to perhaps in the chat give me some examples of areas or tweets where you can see evidence of this type of style being used in his tweets. Yep, go ahead, Sylvia.
Are these from the 4th or the 6th?
Both, actually. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I believe, are from the 6th, and then the bottom 2 are from the 4th.
Okay.
Were you making notes there, Sylvia?
I am. Sorry, I just muted myself.
No, it's fine. I just every time I read through, I see other things that that are worth chatting about. So, what do we think? Is there any evidence in these tweets of some of the things that we were talking about earlier? I think the one that jumps out most to me is the extreme language. How about you, Sylvia? What sort of is the most remarkable thing to you?
Yeah, I thought hyperbole, things like that, blathering idiot, and yeah, the fact that he's quite rude as well.
That's true. Yeah,
which
yeah.
wasn't in my description, but
yeah, that wasn't something that you brought up, but I think that's very true. That there has been lots of commentary, hasn't there, about the tone of the way he.
I mean, I thought this one was interesting because it's so long. That one.
Yeah.
What does anyone else think? Does either of you, Avani or Yambo, do you have any observations about it?
Is there anything in these tweets that jumps out at you? You can write right on the slide here. So if you just go up to the top, there's a pencil and you can pick different colors. So even if you want to circle a couple of words that sort of match some of these criteria, do you see any characteristics that might stand out? Some examples maybe of other places where he's using extreme language, or even language errors.
So this obliterates, that's quite extreme, isn't it?
Scum, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a very sort of surprising thing. You wouldn't expect to hear your politicians talking about their opposition as scum.
It's weird that it has a capital letter as well, isn't it?
That is one of the other notable things. When you see a lot of his tweets, he has a lot of random capitalization.
Initial capitalization. Oh.
He also uses the sort of fake quote marks as well, such as in like "wear your mask" in the beauty parlor. So, well, yeah, beauty, right?
Yeah.
Sort of the sarcasm quote, right?
Yeah.
Faulty ballots. So yeah,
Where's
you
that?
see that.
Faulty ballots.
Where's my pencil up here? This idea of faulty right there.
Oh yeah, that was a really messy circle you did.
I'm awful at it. My students were making fun of me the other day. I had a slide and I was trying to write something on it, and they were like, "Heather, just go to the text and write it, because you can't." I don't know. I'm really not.
Oh no, someone cleared it.
Oh, no, it's all
Did
right.
you clear it?
I didn't, but that's fine. I know it's really frustrating with this when you can't just erase what you just wrote.
Yeah.
But it erases everything.
Yeah.
Yes, but somebody had highlighted the exclamation marks. Yeah, exactly. The punctuation always makes me sound quite excited. So just one exclamation mark, but yeah, then a number of cases he's got it repeatedly. Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah. Whoever's highlighting all the exclamation marks. Exactly. So he's always shouting like this. It's just everything. You feel like he's just constantly, really, really excited about this.
I thought this was interesting. This "wear your mask in the beauty parlor, Nancy." Not only because it's a real put down, but it's an imperative form, isn't it? So it's an order. It's a direct imperative. It's also
he's also does it here. Well, yeah. Are you listening, Nancy?
It's also dialogic, meaning it's like he's having a conversation, and it's dialogic in a couple of places. So here, that one where he says Nancy, it's like he's having a conversation with her. He's addressing her directly, and he does that also here. Yeah, with the one you circled. Did you just circle that?
Yeah, I just circled that one. Yeah, are you? Can't you tell from the garbage circle that
Yeah,
I
I thought it was you.
That's
Yeah.
how you would identify me if you're looking at my slides. Would be,
Yes,
oh, this must
authorship.
be Heather's work because
Yeah.
she can't draw a circle. But
Yeah.
yes. So yeah, and the random capitalization. A lot of the constantly fight, chaos. Sort of, he's always talking about our great USA. Um,
This is,
yeah,
I don't know who underlined that, but that's an example of the vague language that we were talking about as well.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
Many
the
others.
many others. Yeah, many
Not
others. Yeah.
a, what does that say? Not a comp. I can't read that.
No, I can't. It went off the end there. Oh, that's
Yeah.
another good one. He is a total loser. So again, both tone
Mm.
and insulting, and not just not a complete sentence. Yes, no, that's
Oh,
fine.
well
Thank
done.
you
Yeah.
for that. Yeah, exactly. He's tweeting in sentence fragments.
Mhm.
Yeah. That man should never be president of our country. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good one, as well. So yeah, you can see he has a consistent style, but also it matches up with the criteria that were highlighted earlier. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look specifically at the tweets that came out on the 5th, and we're going to look at them and say, okay, what are the characteristics that we see in these tweets? So here we go to the next slide, that one that has these tweets. Okay, so these are the tweets that came out on the 5th. So let's look at these. Okay, so what kind of patterns and structures do we see, and what kind of language are we looking at when we look at these tweets?
Did he write all of these tweets capitalized, or has it just been capitalized for this?
Yep, that was how they were. They came out. Yep, they were all capitalized.
Mm-hmm.
So
Avani
that's all.
says the repetition of vote.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, we certainly had seen that he could be repetitive, but this is kind of extreme repetitiveness, and yeah, the fact that they're in all caps. So we had seen. I'm just going to go back really quick. So we had seen that he does like using all caps, doesn't he? He just, but it's not always the whole thing. Like every so often he'll have a whole tweet in caps, but that's not typical. Normally it's just a couple of
Were
words.
those all on that last slide? Were they all his tweets, or did you pick and choose?
Supposedly they're all his tweets.
This one and the last one.
Yeah.
Because
so,
these are, I mean, so obviously a lot shorter than the ones before, aren't they?
Yeah, that's another point too. Yeah, they're very, very short. He's actually, his tweets were quite a bit longer, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. He makes a lot of claims. One could say that about a lot of things that he said with very little evidence to back it up. These they're all fragments too.
Yeah.
Most of them are fragments, so these got no complete sentences.
And there's no I.
There's no I. Yeah, that's true.
He couldn't keep himself out of it before, could he?
That's true. Yeah.
And actually, there's I don't know, but there are no adjectives here, are there? Strongest, yeah.
Strongest, okay. Yeah, strongest.
But I mean, it's not as his. I don't know if that's true, but just impressionistically. Sorry, I'm just moving back.
No, let's go back.
He describes the things quite in hyperbolic terms, but this is quite matter of fact in a way, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Biggest
it's like
ever.
yeah, it's insufficiently wordy, and he just yeah.
It's also exactly what you would do if you were pretending to be someone else.
Well,
it's
that's
like,
what. Yeah,
it feels like, if you're unsure, if you've got the president's Twitter account in your hands, and you're thinking, oh my God, I've got to tweet as the president, you'd keep it short, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So that's the question here: is if if these are his tweets, and I think we're in agreement here that probably this is not him tweeting, it, as linguists, we can see quite quickly these are not, it's not the same type of language. If you weren't a linguist, though, what about these tweets might immediately jump out at you, is perhaps the fact that it is in all caps sometimes. So maybe someone has looked at his tweets and gone, okay, if I'm trying to pretend to be the president, using capitals is sounds like him.
Yeah, and these are imperative forms, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're a call to action.
Lots of exclamation marks.
Everyone has vote, but they're imperatives that do something, which is quite characteristic of him because, you know, there are no politeness features or would you mind voting? Or it would be great if you could. It's like,
you should try voting, yeah. Yes, and it is strange that at a time when, you know, he's in the hospital and he's someone ill, all of a sudden the focus is not on him. It's, you know, he's not talking about him and his experiences. He's talking about, you know, everything else. And
yeah,
you know, it seems unlikely that he wouldn't have. He wouldn't have.
These people were sitting there really panicking, weren't they, that he was going to be seriously ill?
Well, and this is
like, how are we going to keep this going?
How do we cover this up? And that's why it really does remind me of that Nichols case in a way, in that, you know, just in case he wasn't going to recover, we wanted to keep the tweets going to cover up how unwell he is. If we can keep tweeting, you create the illusion that he's still competent. All right, so I think show of hands, does anyone think these were written by Trump? No? Or have we pretty much unanimously gone? No, so I mean, I suppose then we could add in another possible career direction for a linguist would be running the PR account for somebody quite famous. So you'd have to be able to mimic somebody else's speech fairly accurately. I'd like to suggest that not be like Criminal Mastermind, in which you can you know.
Although I was talking to my first years about this week, but another career direction for linguists is often intelligence. So MI5, MI6, if that floats your boat, then linguistics is a really good way into espionage and
especially in intelligence, it's assessing threat. So being able to do a lot of corpus linguistics, where you're sifting through billions of tweets and looking for particular patterns of
anomalies
words and anomalies. Yeah, exactly.
You have to not mind working for the government and doing whatever they're trying to make you do, which
I imagine, yeah, that's a difficult corpus to have to.
Sorry, that was me.
Go through. No, that was fine. It was quite evident to some people that the way that Trump was tweeting was not completely in character, and in fact, some have suggested that there is more than one person running his Twitter account, so that he seems to tweet between certain periods of time, and sometimes it might be somebody else who has control of the account, because they tend to be longer and more lexically complex tweets than the ones that he sends. So that's sort of what this study had looked at as well. These two linguists had inspected his tweets to see also patterns in authorship. So they argue that there is more than one author.
Did they say two or three or?
I think it was several, and they sort of mapped where different people or different strategies were being used for different purposes. So just even the way that he tweets has changed over time depending on where they were in the campaign. So they think that it wasn't probably him changing strategies. It was whatever his team has told him he has to focus on different things.
Yeah, I mean, it was also really interesting when he gave that after the Capitol Hill got stormed, and he immediately made that speech, which seemed to be not at all apologetic, and then the next day made another speech which was clearly written for him. I mean, that then said, you know, that he didn't agree with the violence and that everyone should be peaceful, but it was so not his style. I think that would be another case, wouldn't it? That would make a good project.
It would be. That would be a really interesting thing to compare. It would make
a good student project though as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it really would.
To take some of his speeches that he normally delivers, and then look at that one that was clearly given to him, because at that point he thought he was being impeached and he had to kind of be a bit more reasonable, really.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at possibly being charged with treason, that suddenly becomes slightly more willing to just read the speech off the teleprompter and not, you know, go ad lib your true feelings.
Yeah. Interesting. Good.
All right, do you want to go on to the next slide there?
Oh, this is just some reading. So actually, I didn't put your one, Heather. I didn't put this stylistic variation, but you can find that on Google Scholar. If anyone's interested, just go to Google Scholar. You'll be able to find it.
Yeah, the top one is actually sort of a more general write-up of it as well. So even if you Google that headline, I think it's from the Atlantic or something.
Right. Yeah. But the other, so I've put a range of reading here. So the colors aren't great actually, but when if you download, I think this is on the notes page as well. It is on the notes page in the Google Drive documents, so you can use live links from there. So if you want details about our undergraduate courses, there's the link. There's a link there to why study English language and linguistics. So if you're thinking about what to study at university, if you're in your sixth form and you're thinking, why should I do this or that, then there's an interesting article there. And that's where I took that graph about the skills that the vocational skills that people look for. An introductory text in language and linguistics is Larry Trask's Language of the Basics, if you're interested. A good text on forensic linguistics is this one. I think, Heather, you use that.
That's the one that I use. That I teach from in my module. It's a really good introduction to the topic.
Yeah, and then Donald Trump's Language is possibly a step further than you want to go, but there have been books written on the language of Donald Trump, as you would kind of expect. They might be a bit expensive, but you know they could possibly.
They might be going on sale very soon.
Yeah, no, these are on sale now. Oh, I see what you mean. They're not
on further sale. In the bargain bin very shortly. Yes.
Maybe. No, we'll be doing this. We'll be sifting through this for years to come.
It is. Yeah.
Lots of data.
Yes.
So anyway, there's a couple more references for you if you're interested.